We'd been told all our lives that we were nothing. We'd been told by our teachers, by the police, by everybody that we were rubbish. We were abused, we were violently assaulted, we were excluded, we were thrown off trains, we were thrown off buses, we were spat on, and it just made sense to say, no, you're not doing that to me anymore. And with greater and greater numbers, it was possible to say, we will not tolerate this constant abuse. We are people.
In Townsville in the far north, a Torres Strait Islander man, Eddie Koiki Mabo, is involved in the local black political movement. After being labelled a communist and losing his job, he manages to find work as a gardener at the ironically named James Cook University. As the only Indigenous person on campus, he is invited to lecture to students.
In the Torres Strait, land ownership is the same throughout. The system has existed as long as we could remember. The land was inherited always by the male descendants. During his lifetime, he would make sure that his family and friends knew which one of his sons would be heir to his land. None of the land will be ever sold for cash. Koiki Mabo.
He was talking about the land that he owned in Murray Island and all that sort of stuff, and I thought, gee, I'd better point out to him that he doesn't own that land. It's Crown land.
He couldn't understand why they were questioning him about this, about him owning land. He just knew that he did, because his father gave it to him, and therefore, then he'll hand it on to his children.
He said it was a nonsense. And he asked lawyers, is there an answer to this question?
The question is the legitimacy of the Queensland Government's claim to own Murray Island. It is posed by Koiki and his people in the High Court. The case takes Koiki's name, and it becomes known as Mabo versus Queensland.
I suddenly realised that the Queensland government, for instance, Australian government, were claiming our land, and I was saying that's not your land. You came from England, not from here. So that was the reason we took the government. And government is big, it is big. But we were not aware how small we are. We only knew who we were.
Across the nation, land rights becomes the dream for Indigenous Australians.
Aboriginal Islander people want land rights because it's impossible, I think, for most of them to consider that they don't have land rights, that they've grown up on the land, they were the original inhabitants of this land, and to grant them land rights is an acceptance by the broader community that this is so.
In 1988, the nation celebrates 200 years of white occupation. In an echo of the day of mourning 50 years earlier, Indigenous people gather, seeking recognition of their land rights, but this time in their thousands. Caught up in the moment, the then Prime Minister, Bob Hawke, promises a treaty.
There was an opportunity with the bicentennial for Bob Hawke to bring the nation with him in a settlement of the issues.
There shall be a treaty negotiated between the Aboriginal people and the government on behalf of all the people of Australia.
And basically Bob Hawke backed down from the commitment to a treaty and destroyed that opportunity, probably forever.
With the treaty concept now dead, Indigenous Australians look to the Mabo case for recognition. After 10 years, the case finally reaches the High Court for the judges to consider the evidence.
But Koiki was ready. You know, that's why he said that my strength comes from the domain that I belong to. You see, that's where I get my strength from, being a Marine. I'm standing in my domain. These people, they are outsiders. They come to fight me about something that is mine. You know, an outsider come to fight Eddie Mabo or something that belongs to him. He's going to have a hard time. That is his own words.
Koiki will not be beaten by the courts, but rather from within. 6 months before the decision is handed down, he is diagnosed with cancer.
This is how much foresight my father had, was on his deathbed. He actually said, you know, we're going to win. So he knew.
I lay in bed thinking about the future and how I would like it to be, even if I am not here. I thought about the struggles I had been through over the past years, while the rest of Black Australia awaits with me for the High Court decision to be brought down at any time.
I visit him almost every day, and then he said to me, the freedom will come for the island people. Not only the island people, freedom will come for the Aboriginal people, and also freedom will come for the white society as well. And I said to him, well, I can understand you, you know, if you fight against the terra nullius and you get rid of that. You can set the Aboriginal people free, the islander people free, but what do you mean that you're going to set the white society free, the white people free? And he said, because the white society is living a lie. And I said, what do you mean? He said, they see us, but then they say we are not here. And that's because of terra nullius. So they've got a big chain around their neck, they've got a chain around their minds. So they are bound just as much as we are.
Almost 6 months later, the High Court delivers their verdict.
I then rang Murray Island. I spoke to a lady at the phone box at the council chambers, and I said, do you remember Eddie Mabo's case? And she said, yes. Well, I'm ringing you from the High Court building in Canberra, and the judges have just handed down their decision, and Eddie Mabo's won his case. And she went, screams and yells, and phone fell down, and there was a great clattering noise, and she seemed to rush out of the phone booth, and I heard this strange noise proceeding in the distance as she announced the news to people on the island, and that was a special moment.
I just walked down just towards the church with my hands up. We've won, we've won, we've won.
Next up, Aboriginal land claims. How safe is your home?
The state governments, the pastoral industry, the graziers, and the mining industry formed an unholy alliance and gathered in Canberra, and they ran a multi-million-dollar campaign to depict the Mabo findings of the High Court as utter evil, as the end of Australia's land tenure system, would produce anarchy, would destroy our economy.
The Mabo ruling on Aboriginal land rights is set to cause uproar, with claims it could lead to a form of apartheid.
It was an outburst of vile race hate, and it was insane. And most of it was completely and absolutely wrong.
You know, at the end, you can see that everything he'd done was for everybody. It wasn't just for him.
The power of an idea, and he understood this, wins above all else, you see. There is nothing else that wins. Only the power of an idea can win. And he understood the import of what he was doing. He went right to the heart of the matter and dealt with the fundamental injustice. As far as I'm concerned, he's one of Australia's greatest heroes.